Hello, everyone. My name is, well, I have a long, complicated name, as he already alluded to. You can call me Vele. I work for SEB here in Helsinki. First and foremost, I'm a gaming nerd. And secondarily, I'm also an equity analyst. My favorite game is World of Warcraft. It's in case someone wants to know. Also, Doom and Command and Conquer are really good. So, the evergreens. What I'm here today, or why I'm here today, is to elaborate a little bit on what we as investors or people representing the investors are looking for, and how you game companies can help us to do it even better. In my role as an equity analyst, I research Finnish, well, mainly Finnish, small cap games and IT companies. In my previous employer, I also did some work on the larger global players, Activision, Blizzard, EA, and the others. But also I did a lot of work on the Nordic listed game companies, Paradox, G5 Entertainment, and so on. So let's see if it were. There it is. Just a few mandatory corporate slides. So SEB is, well, really old bank, and we've based in Etelä-Esplanadi, here in the Intercenter. This is a sort of a broad organizational picture of us. I work in the markets where me and the team, we focus on analyzing mainly listed companies across different sectors. I'll shortly show a picture of the team. We also have large corporate coverage, so corporate banking side, which is obviously very important to us, and with whom I work rather closely together. This is the sort of picture of the equity analyst team. I'm there in the middle. I'll be taking over Rovio analysis, but my role there is to broaden the scope to include other Finnish listed game companies, but I'll be also working a lot on the, let's say, non-listed ones, so privately held companies who perhaps one day could be listed companies, and I'll spend considerable time also on the sort of global bigger peers. Oh, that's a very small picture, but the point is that SEB is a global player, so we are headquartered in Stockholm, but we also have presence in North America, London, and also in Asia, where we represent the cases to our clients. And this is just a picture of SEB's activity in the IPO market. Still only a few game companies there, but who knows, hopefully there will be other ones. But now let's get to the real interesting part. So, as I said, we analyze companies. We try to understand what the game companies actually do. We try to understand them so that we are able to discuss with pension funds, municipalities, foundations, family offices, and also asset managers, portfolio managers who manage the money. We pitch them with ideas. We have a dialogue with them and try to help them understand what the game company is all about. All our clients are institutional clients, so the AUM, assets under management, ranges from a few €100,000 to hundreds of millions of euros, and even to tens of billions of euros. I divided my presentation to 3 parts. One is about the game portfolio, so the games itself. The other one is about UA and monetization, and the third part is about growth. I'll shortly tell you a little bit about the process, how we approach and slice and dice the game companies. So essentially, we want to understand what does the company do. So what is the game portfolio like? What are their sort of key titles? What is their track record? So how long these games have been in the market? How well has the company been able to leverage them and make the games grow? The other big aspect for us is also to assess whether, I mean, not all games make gazillion euros a month, but we want to be able to assess properly what is the growth sort of trajectory for the different games and what is the company's plan of leveraging these titles. For instance, here we have some Finnish and some foreign examples of great games, some of which have been in existence for a long time. For instance, StarCraft, but other ones there as well. It's interesting to see how some companies are able to keep their titles alive and either having external IPs or creating their own IPs. And essentially, we want to understand what makes your game company unique, and is this something that you can hold on to over a longer period of time? So essentially, how sustainable is it? The competitive advantage, I mean. We typically have a lot of irritating questions for the new game companies. We ask a lot of questions to fully understand what's going on and how does the company work, who's the management, how they are incentivized, and what is the sort of strategic outlook for the company, and how you actually aim to achieve that. And on top of this sort of qualitative profile, we obviously do a lot of spreadsheets, as the previous speaker just showed. I didn't bring my spreadsheets with me, they're too boring to look at, but nevertheless we do a lot of quantitative modeling. We slice and dice your balance sheets and income statements and so on and so on. We model the company and make a valuation assessment, and all this, the qualitative profile as well as the quantitative bit, results in a recommendation. It results in a price target, stock price target, and projections of how we see company evolving going forward. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, our process. And as I said about the games, we want to understand fully the drivers of growth and return now versus what they are in the future. So we want to have a good dialogue with the company. Okay, so you have these wonderful franchises, IPs, games on the market. We want to understand how you see them going forward. And we want to also understand what proportion of the future growth comes from the new titles, so the new product launches. And what can we sort of expect from that? Ideally, we want to see proof that you guys have been able to do it. So if you have one good game, that's great. So there's some evidence, some proof of concept that you guys obviously have a good team and you've been able to develop the game. But even better if you have a game portfolio, because the way we think of investing to game companies is that usually the visibility tends to be, well, not perfect at least, but the more games you have and the wider portfolio you have, For instance, if we think of something like Activision Blizzard, which obviously is a mature company, they have their StarCrafts, Warcrafts, then they have the Hearthstone, then they have the Call of Duties, and so on. The broader the game portfolio, the better the visibility, and better we are able to sort of model it out and see how it works. But this is not to say that we wouldn't be interested in single game companies. They are also very interesting as long as we see that the company has a good plan to grow. The issue many times is, which I alluded to earlier, is that we always look at game companies from outside. So we have very limited visibility. And this is something that I've been discussing with a lot of game companies, is that it would be great. I mean, the more we, as on the sell side, but also on the buy side, the more we are able to understand your metrics, your KPIs, assess the game somehow, the better we are able to do that, the better we are able to communicate that to the end investors. Ideally, what we want to see is, for instance, how many users you have per monthly active users you have, how many of those actually pay for the content, what is the average revenue per paying user, and so on, so that we are able to get a little bit flavor. And as I said, the better we are able to understand the dynamics of your game portfolio, the more realistic picture we are able to paint to the institutional investors, pension funds, municipalities, you name it. And the better dialogue we're able to have with them, so that if you are a listed company, or even if you are not, you don't get unnecessary volatility to your stock price. As I said, it's about managing expectations. So you guys, as game companies, you manage our expectations, and we then try our best to manage the end clients, the end investors' expectations to a realistic level, where you guys, as game companies, you can meet those expectations and hopefully even surpass those. Then just a few words on monetization and user acquisition. This UA is, you guys obviously know the term very well and how it's done. For us, it's sometimes a bit blurry. So we want to carefully understand your go-to-market strategy, and essentially, how do you plan to get new players, and on the other hand, keep those players. So when you have a great game, we want to understand how you plan to keep bringing those players back, if it's by DLCs, if it's by expansions, if it's by live operations. This is something that again relates to the earnings dynamic I alluded to earlier. We also want to understand your marketing strategy, essentially the UA. How do you plan to drive the UA budget? It's, as the previous speaker just said, that UA is becoming more and more expensive. We want to understand how that drives the returns, and on the other hand, how your UA spending affects the bottom line, i.e. earnings of the company. And yeah, that's, I guess, the important thing. And then just a few words. I see I'm running out of time. I took some nice photos here. Merkling evolving to Captain Cookie, and a Whelpling evolving to Onyxia. So basically growth. We want to, it's very important for us that we also obviously understand that it's really difficult to predict growth, especially if you're a young game company. If your game takes off, it can have amazing growth rates. But for a small company, we feel that it's important that you guys have a good growth path that you are striving to. You may have the best game in the world, but it's very important that you guys are able to communicate to us and we are able to understand how you actually plan to achieve those targets that you've imposed to yourselves. Sometimes game companies as well as other companies tend to be a bit shy on the data. We feel that the more open you guys can be towards us, i.e. revealing some of the KPIs that you look at, so that we are also able to assess, are you achieving that growth? Are you surpassing that growth? How are your games actually doing? And then when it comes to financing, it's good also to think it so that we, for instance, at SEB, we have the corporate banking side, and I know those guys have a lot of dialogue with young game companies. It's good that you guys have or enter a dialogue with likes of us very early on. So, I mean, there's no need to have a high threshold to contact, for instance, our corporate guys and discuss about potential need for financing. We all know that it's not necessarily that cheap to develop a game, let alone get to publish that and get users to your games. So we always think it's good if you come to us at an early stage. And if you need external financing, it's good to elaborate carefully what this financing is needed for. This sounds like an obvious comment, but it's important that you have a carefully well thought plan how you are going to execute that growth plan. And as I said, I'm actually running out of time, but please have a low threshold to come and chat with us. I always value a good dialogue, and even if you guys are not all planning to become a stock market company, there are many steps before actually getting your company listed on stock exchange, and it's best if you take them bit by bit.
Cool. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have any questions for VP? We have one. Oh, two. Good. This is can be difficult. Make them difficult questions. Technical ones, no, don't.
Strategic versus VC investment. Why should we go with VC versus a strategic investor, maybe with more industry knowledge? What would be the benefits of working with somebody like yourself?
Well, I think I have to underline that I'm more focused on the listed companies myself, but I think that this is something that you guys should think carefully and also have a dialogue with the different types of parties there are. There are many different, as you alluded to, there are many different types of external financing, and you should have a dialogue with different partners to see what suits you the best. We have some good solutions. There are others who also have good solutions, but I think it's important that you choose a partner that is there in the long run and who wants to evolve and develop the relationship on a longer scope.
Okay. Oh.
You mentioned you look at differentiating factors when you evaluate a company and whether it's something that a company can sustain. What are some of those differentiating factors?
Well, one obvious thing that I try to assess is the strength of the game portfolio. If the company has, the previous speaker also told us about IPs, for instance. If they have, for instance, proprietary IPs or franchises that they've been able to develop, that's usually, I mean, for instance, I play Hearthstone all the time. Well, not all the time, but a lot. Whenever there's an expansion, I go to App Store and buy boosters, 50 boosters, 200 boosters, something like that.
We have a whale on the stage here, so anybody...
I'm hooked. So if you have an IP a good franchise. That's also obvious one distinguishing factor. But there are others which are not as clear cut. One is the team who's made the game, the sort of brain capacity of the company. That's obviously one important factor as well.